All right, so what does the frame look like? Well, I think it looks something like this. And this is, as far as I can tell, this is the bare bones. This is the bare bones of a variety of things. It's a bare bones story. It's a bare bone conceptual framework. It's a bare bone design, to speak in Heideggerian terms. It's like it's the bare bones world that you live in. You're always in one of these worlds. There's no getting out of them. You can move from one to another, but you're always in a world like this. And so this is the world that you're in. You're somewhere, because you have to be somewhere. Now, you might not know where that is, which means that the somewhere that you are is chaotic, in which case you need to go over your past in great detail and figure out where you are. It's like you're lost, right? You're lost, and the problem with being lost is when you're lost, you don't know where to go, and the problem with not knowing where to go is there's a million places that you could go, and a million places is too many places for you to go without dying. So being lost is not good. So you need to know where you are. One of the things that we built online, my partners and I, is this program called Past Authoring that helps people lay out the narrative of their past, to identify, to break their life down into 6 stages, epochs we call them, and then to identify the emotionally significant moments in each epoch and to write them out. What happened negatively, what happened positively, what the consequences were, what you derived from it, perhaps what you could have done differently, perhaps what you learned from it, all of that, so that you can narrow in, zero in on determining precisely where it is that you are right now. And people are often loath to do that because they actually don't want to know, because they'd rather be spread out in a sort of half-blind manner in the fog, hoping that the place that they're at is better than it really is, and deluding themselves by remaining vague, than to figure out, I'm right here, right now, with these specific problems. But it's actually better to do that, because if you have a set of specific problems, and you've really narrowed them down, and really specified them, then you can probably start fixing them, and you can start fixing them in micro ways, bit by bit. But there's no way you can do that without knowing where you are. It's impossible. And you can kind of tell if you don't know where you are. It's quite straightforward. If you are haunted by reveries of the past, for events that are older than approximately 18 months, if they continue to come up in your mind over and over, in your dreams over and over, you haven't extracted the world out from your past experiences. The potential is still trapped in the past. And to confront the potential means to confront the dragon of the past. And of course, that's terrifying, and it can seriously be terrifying. So for example, maybe you're vague and ill-formed and ill-defined because you were abused very badly when you were a child, 4 years old, something like that. And maybe you were abused by a family member, because that's generally who does the abusing. And so that just makes it worse. And then what that means is that you've got you've had an implicit encounter with malevolent evil. No, you've had a direct encounter with malevolent evil, but you have an implicit hypothesis of malevolent evil that's plaguing you. It's still there. It's trapped in the memories, right? It's trapped in the representational structure. And as an adult, you're now faced with the necessity of articulating that fully before you have any chance whatsoever of freeing yourself from it. And so that's no joke. Lots of times people have to go into the past. That's what the psychoanalysts do, and say, look, here, something came along and just bloody well knocked me over. And it isn't even that I repressed it, which I think was, well, we won't talk about Freud's errors because Freud was a genius, so we'll just leave him alone. But sometimes it's not repression, it's just that terrible things happen to people at such a young age that there isn't a bloody chance in hell that they can figure out why they happened or what to do with them or what they mean. And then you can carry that with you, and you carry it with you. It's like your body encounters the world in stages, and it happens very rapidly. Well, it can extend over years, but the initial stages happen very rapidly. So, for example, if you're walking down the road and you hear a loud noise behind you, you'll go like this. That's a predator defense response, by the way. You crouch down, and that's to stop something from jumping on your back and getting at your neck too easily. That's like a few hundred milliseconds. It's really fast, or even faster than that. And it better be, because something like a snake, we'll say, can nail you just right now, so you better be fast. But it's low resolution. It's like danger snake, something like that, or danger predatory cat. It's that fast. And then you can unravel that and categorize it, but that takes time. You do that with emotion, and then you do it with cognition. And you can do that with long-term thinking, because maybe you've encountered someone specifically malevolent and predatory at work. That happens to people a lot, who's operating as a destructive bully and who seems to have no positive function whatsoever and is only living that out. And then you don't know what to do about it. So you're in prey mode. I don't mean this kind of mode, although that would help too. But I mean, you're acting like a prey animal, and then you have this terribly complex thing to decompose, which is, what the hell's up with this person? Why are they making my life miserable? What is it about me that allows them to make my life miserable? That's a nasty little road to walk down. And you're stuck with having to decompose it. Maybe you can't. Maybe formulating an explicit philosophy of good and evil to deal with something malevolent in your environment actually just happens to be beyond you. And that could easily be. It's certainly the case for people who are young. And it's the case for plenty of adults as well. It's no simple thing to manage. It's something, too, that often soldiers who have post-traumatic stress disorder have to do because they've encountered terrible things. They've either done them or ran into them, and they need to update their moral model of the world, or they end up in something closely approximating hell. Anyway, so you need to know where you are. That's this, what is. Where are you? So you're navigating. You're a navigator. You're a sailor on an ocean, man. That's what you are. You're a mobile creature. You're going from point A to point B all the time. You're not sitting there glued to a rock like some brainless, sea creature. There's a funny little creature called a hydra. Very simple little creature. In its juvenile stage, it has a brain because it swims around. But then when it turns into an adult, it latches itself to a rock and promptly digests its brain. Because if you're just sitting on a rock and you're not moving, you don't need a brain. But that's not our issue, right? We're zipping around in the world, and so we're navigating agents. And so to navigate, there's two things you need to know. And the first is, where the hell are you? Exactly, precisely, right? Razor sharp. What's good about you and what's bad about you? By your own reckoning. You don't have to. You can ask other people, but this is a game you play yourself. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, I'm taking stock. What is it that's okay about me and what needs some work? And you got to watch to not be too self-critical when you're doing that too, because that can just be another kind of flaw. And then the next is, okay, well, where are you going? What's your destination? Well, and that's what the frame is. Now, you could do that in a very sophisticated way. And you do that by thinking consciously about who it is that you are in an articulated manner and where you want to go and why and how you're going to get there. And people hardly ever do that. That's come as such an absolute shock to me as an educator. Because one of the other programs, I use this in my classes. One of the other programs in this suite of programs is called the Future Authoring Program. And I started developing it in my Maps of Meaning class, which is where some of this material is from. And I got students to write about their past. It's like, okay, we're talking about stories, so let's tell your story. Who are you? How did you get here? And what are you now? That usually helps people put things to rest, although it's quite stressful while you're doing it. Stress goes up when you're doing it, and maybe you feel miserable for a couple of weeks, and then stress goes down and it stays down. So that's also why people don't do it, because who the hell wants to have their stress go up? But if it's temporary, it's a sacrifice. So then the next issue is, well, where are you going? And one of the things that, and this I cannot understand. These students that had been in education system for 15 years, 14 years, high-end students, most of them, not once in their whole bloody life did anyone ever get them to sit down for like a day and say, all right, justify your existence. Like, well, seriously, it's like here you are in university, you're taking a bunch of courses, you've got some sort of vague career plan. It's like, defend the damn thing a bit, since you're going to go live it and everything. You're staking everything on it. It's like, what's your damn plan? And why are you so convinced that it's not the plan of a babbling fool? Because if you haven't thought about it, then it is. And if you really want to go out there and live that out, one of the things Carl Jung said was that you're in a story, whether you know it or not. And then he made two nice comments about that. If it's someone else's story, you're probably going to get a bit part. And it might not be the one you want. And if it's a story that you don't know, it might be one with a really bad ending. Or maybe it's just bad, period, with a worse ending. And if you don't know what the story that you're living out is, maybe that's the one. You know, maybe you got that from your mother, you got it from your grandmother, you got it from your aunt, or God only knows where you picked it up, because you pick up things like mad, because that's what human beings are like. So maybe you're living a malevolent tragedy unconsciously. And then one thing you might ask yourself is, well, how wretched and miserable is your life? Let's add futile to that. How wretched, miserable, and futile is your life? And you might say, well, yeah, 70% on each count. It's like, then you're probably unconsciously living out a malevolent tragedy. And maybe that's not for the best. Oh, it's either that or the whole universe hates you, right? Or 70% hates you, you know. So anyways, you know, we got students to start writing in detail about not what they wanted. It's not a career thing. Because that's the closest people usually get, is they have a career plan. It's like, no, it's not a career plan. That's peripheral. Important, but peripheral. It's like, all right, you got 3 years, man. You're going to live them anyways. Devote those 3 years to setting the world up around you so that it's the best it could possibly be for you. As if you were taking care of yourself, as if you cared for yourself. Well, what would that look like? You know, let's say, just for the sake of argument, if you figured out where you were, that you could have what would be best for you. Well, what is that? I bet you never asked. People don't ask. And so life comes at them like random snakes, and they sort of fend them off. And life goes by, and things don't work out the way people expected them to. But a huge part of that is they didn't know where they were because they wouldn't look, or didn't know that they should look. Ignorance and willful blindness, right? Two great catastrophes. And they never figured out where they wanted to go or why. Now, there's a problem with figuring out where you want to go. And the problem is that you make your conditions for failure clear to yourself. And people don't like that. So if you keep yourself in the fog, then you can't tell when you screwed up. Now, that isn't so good because you're still screwing up. You're just too blind, self-blind to notice. Although in the short term, that's less painful. If you make your criteria for success razor sharp, then you know every time you screw up. But that's great, because then you could fix it. You could either repair the behavioral inadequacy or the conceptual inadequacy that you're using as a tool in that situation, or maybe you could adjust your damn plan. Either way, you can fix it. And so, okay, so you're living in one of these bloody things, and you might as well, it seems to me, you might as well make it the best one you could live in, because you don't have anything better to do. Now, if you don't do that, if you don't do it consciously, and this is what the psychoanalysts pointed out, is that you have innumerable quasi-autonomous subsystems that make you up, that will generate stories impulsively, and you'll just act them out. And you know that because you watch yourself over 2 weeks and you think, Jesus, I did a lot of stupid things in the last 2 weeks. And you think, why? And it's because you're a collection of somewhat random quasi-autonomous personality units, and lacking a leader, they're just going to fire off whenever they want. You know, first you're hungry, then you're thirsty, then you want to go to bed with your wife, you know, then you want to sleep in, then you want to tell your boss off, then you want to curse at the guy that cuts you off in traffic. It's like, you're kind of like a 2-year-old, you know, just it's one emotional frame after another vying for dominance. There's no overarching hierarchy, and there's no king at the top. And so, you know, we already talked about pyramids of competence, and what's supposed to be at the top is you want to bring all those things together. We understand this neurologically. I'll show you some of that in a little bit. We understand this neurologically, how this maps in some sense right onto the neural structure of your being. You want to put something in control, and the thing that you should put in control is the bloody thing that pays attention and learns, right? Everything else in the hierarchy should be subordinate to the thing that pays attention and learns. And you could think, well, that's the message of the idea of logos. That's for sure, because logos is partly attention and partly communication. And you learn a lot by communicating with others. Okay, so you need to know where you are.